My wife cheated on me and ended up pregnant with her affair partner's child. Hello, Reddit eyes plus here. My wife's betrayal wasn't just an affair. It was a masterclass in deception. She didn't just break her vows. She brought another man into our lives, one who wasn't even trying to hide his influence on her. And the real gut punch? She got pregnant, and it wasn't mine. The day I showed her my first Reddit post was the day I saw how far her anger could stretch. She was furious, as if my venting had somehow tarnished her pristine image, igniting a fight so loud our kids could probably hear it through closed doors. When she finally went silent, I hoped it was the beginning of some kind of clarity. Weeks passed, and she eventually apologized for not taking my advice about the rabbit, our kid's pet, which had died. She admitted she just couldn't stand the idea of being wrong. I apologized too, thinking this was a new chapter, a chance to start fresh. I even suggested marriage counseling, but she dismissed it. Nothing's wrong with us, she said, like our problems were just ghosts I'd conjured, and for a while, I tried to believe her. But my eldest daughter, bless her heart, saw through it all. She came to me, clutching my hand and trembling, saying she needed to tell me something. She'd kept quiet, she said, because her mother had bribed her into silence, but she couldn't hold it in anymore. Mommy has a special friend, she whispered, the shame in her eyes enough to twist my heart in knots. Her courage left me shaken. She was just a kid, but she knew this was all wrong. In hindsight, maybe I'd seen the signs too. My wife's short temper, her increasingly erratic behavior, it all started clicking into place. She'd picked fights over nothing, hurled petty insults about things that hadn't mattered in years, like the fact that I used to smoke. That night, I realized I couldn't ignore it anymore, so I installed hidden cameras, carefully, covertly. I told myself that if I was wrong, no one would ever know, but I wasn't wrong. The footage piled up quickly. She'd been sneaking in her special friend, a man she once mentored at work, 10 years her junior. I remembered him well. When she quit her job to stay home with our kids, she'd stayed close to her old co-workers. But I never imagined she'd bring one of them into our home like this. She even had the audacity to bribe our kids with treats and toys, teaching them to lie for her. The man was close enough to her to rub her stomach. My stomach dropped at the sight. She was pregnant, and it wasn't my child. At that moment, my disbelief was eclipsed by disgust and heartbreak. My sister and her husband helped me track my wife's movements with a GPS tracker. They watched her meet this man on one of her girls' nights out. When I saw the video they'd taken of him rubbing her belly, I knew that everything I'd suspected was true. My wife wasn't just cheating, she was creating a new life with this man, and it seemed I was supposed to quietly stand by as it happened. When I confronted her, she was ice cold. She threw every excuse she could at me, even saying she didn't want to be around me or our kids anymore. You're just too boring, she spat. I felt old for too long. I want my do-over baby. She admitted that had I not been financially stable, she would have left me years ago. With that, I made a decision. I was going to end this nightmare on my terms. The next few weeks were a blur of planning. I called a ruthless divorce lawyer in town and handed him the footage. He grinned, understanding that I had a solid case. Living in an at-fault state meant that her affair wasn't just an emotional blow, it was legally devastating for her. When the divorce papers arrived at our doorstep, she went ballistic. The kids were at school, and I was working from home when the sheriff handed her the papers. She stormed into my office, eyes wild, but I stayed calm. She screeched, threw accusations, and finally tried to threaten me, saying she'd tell everyone I was abusive. She actually had the nerve to say she'd get me fired. I told her to do whatever she liked because I had every angle covered. Her face went white as I told her I knew about her do-over baby, the affair, the entire sham. Her desperation hit a new low. She called the police, screaming into the phone, telling them I was some kind of monster, but I was ready. When they arrived, I calmly invited them in and explained the situation, showing them the footage. They watched in silence as her lies unraveled, frame by frame. By the end, they turned to her, disbelief and disappointment in their eyes. The evidence was undeniable. When they placed her in handcuffs, she went from screaming to whimpering, begging them to let her go. But there was no one left to believe her. As the car drove away, I shut down every account in my name and stopped all payments into our joint account. She wanted to be free. Now she could live off her special friend or fend for herself. For 20 years, I thought I'd married the love of my life. But as I watched her disappear from my driveway, I knew I was saying goodbye to someone who never truly existed.